NCIS Season 24. Shocker, Gibbs. Secretly watched over Vance for months. The rain fell steadily over Washington, D.C., turning the city into a blur of gray lights and reflections. Inside NCIS headquarters, Director Leon Vance stood alone in his office. The building was quiet. Too quiet. Most of the agents had gone home hours ago, but Vance remained behind, reviewing case files that refused to leave his mind. The past few months had been difficult. 3 separate investigations had exposed weaknesses inside federal security systems. Several confidential informants had vanished. Worse, intelligence suggested that someone was targeting high-ranking law enforcement officials. Vance had spent decades facing threats. But this felt different. Personal. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally, he ignored those calls. Tonight, something made him answer. Director Vance. Silence. Then a familiar voice. "You're working too hard." Vance froze. His heart nearly stopped. Only one person sounded like that. Only one person carried that particular mix of confidence and sarcasm. Gibbs? The line went dead. Vance stared at the phone. For several seconds, he didn't move. It couldn't be. Could it? Leroy Jethro Gibbs had left NCIS years ago. Officially, he was retired, living in Alaska, far away from investigations, politics, and the endless chaos of Washington. Yet somehow Vance knew exactly what he had heard. That was Gibbs. Without question. The next morning, Vance arrived at headquarters earlier than usual. He said nothing about the phone call. Not to McGee, not to Torres, not even to Parker. Instead, he reviewed security logs. Nothing. No trace, no records, no clues. Whoever made that call knew exactly how to avoid detection, which only increased Vance's suspicion, because there was one man he knew who excelled at disappearing. Gibbs. Meanwhile, several blocks away, former NCIS Special Agent Leroy Jethro Gibbs sat quietly inside a small rented apartment. The room was simple: a table, a chair, a laptop, several photographs, and a wall covered with maps. For months he had been watching, monitoring, waiting. Not because he wanted to return, not because he missed the job, but because he had discovered something dangerous, something that threatened Vance. At first, Gibbs hadn't believed it. The evidence seemed impossible. A hidden network operating inside multiple government agencies, corrupt officials, paid informants, leaked intelligence, people positioned where nobody expected them. Gibbs had stumbled onto the conspiracy accidentally while helping an old contact in Alaska. One clue led to another, and eventually every road pointed toward Washington, toward NCIS, toward Leon Vance. The realization bothered him. Vance wasn't just a colleague. Over the years, they had become something closer to family. They argued, disagreed, sometimes drove each other crazy, but they trusted each other. That trust mattered, which was why Gibbs couldn't ignore what he had found. He couldn't simply call Vance either. If the conspiracy was as deep as he suspected, direct communication might place Vance in greater danger. So Gibbs did what he always did. He investigated, quietly, patiently, alone. Across town, Agent Alden Parker noticed something unusual. Vance seemed distracted. During the morning briefing, the director missed details he normally would have caught immediately. Parker waited until the meeting ended. "Everything okay?" Vance hesitated. "Fine." "You don't look fine." Vance sighed. "I got a strange phone call." Parker raised an eyebrow. "What kind of strange?" The director considered explaining. Instead, he shook his head. "Never mind." Parker wasn't convinced, but he let it go, for now. That afternoon, McGee entered the cyber division carrying a cup of coffee. He immediately noticed a flashing alert on one of the monitors. That's weird. The system had detected repeated attempts to access archived NCIS records. Not recent files, old ones, very old ones, including personnel records from decades earlier. McGee investigated further. The intrusion attempts were sophisticated, professional, almost invisible, almost. He traced the digital fingerprints, then stopped. His eyes widened. No way. The coding style looked familiar, extremely familiar. McGee leaned closer. Years ago, Gibbs had occasionally relied on unusual methods to obtain information, methods that frustrated every cybersecurity protocol in existence. This intrusion felt similar, not identical, but close enough to make McGee uncomfortable. He immediately informed Parker. An hour later, Parker stood beside McGee's workstation. "You think it's Gibbs?" "I didn't say that." "You thought it." McGee nodded reluctantly. "Yeah." Parker stared at the screen. "Why would Gibbs hack NCIS? Maybe he's not hacking us." "What does that mean?" McGee pointed toward several highlighted files. "Whoever accessed these records wasn't looking for operational information. What were they looking for?" McGee zoomed in. Names appeared: current and former government employees, intelligence personnel, federal contractors. Parker studied the list, then noticed a pattern. Every individual had direct or indirect contact with Vance. His expression darkened. "That's not good." "No, it isn't." That evening, Gibbs sat inside his apartment studying surveillance photographs. One image caught his attention: a black SUV parked outside NCIS headquarters. The same vehicle had appeared 7 times during the previous month. Different locations, different dates, same license plate, same driver. The man behind the wheel was named Warren Keene. Officially, he worked for a private security contractor. Unofficially, Gibbs suspected something else entirely. Keene had no visible connection to Vance, yet he repeatedly followed the director's movements. That wasn't coincidence. Gibbs opened another file, then another. The deeper he dug, the worse it became. Vance wasn't merely being observed, he was being studied. Someone wanted detailed information about his habits, his schedule, his routines, his vulnerabilities. That kind of preparation usually led to one thing: an attack. Gibbs clenched his jaw. Time was running out. The following morning, Vance left headquarters for a classified meeting at the Pentagon. His vehicle moved through downtown traffic without incident. Halfway there, however, something happened. A delivery truck suddenly swerved into his lane. The driver lost control. The truck slammed into a concrete barrier. Vehicles scattered. Brakes screamed. Chaos erupted. Vance's driver reacted instantly, avoiding the collision by inches. The SUV stopped. Security personnel rushed forward. Within minutes, authorities concluded the crash was accidental. Mechanical failure. Nothing suspicious, at least officially. But several miles away, Gibbs watched footage from a nearby traffic camera. His instincts immediately rejected the explanation. The truck hadn't malfunctioned. It had been positioned. The timing was too precise, too perfect. Someone had known exactly when Vance would pass through that intersection. Someone had planned it, and someone had failed. For now. That night, Gibbs finally made a decision. The time for observation was over. He needed allies. Reluctantly, he reached for a phone. The first number belonged to Timothy McGee. McGee answered immediately. "Hello?" "McGee." Silence, then disbelief. "Gibbs? Need your help." McGee nearly dropped the phone. After months of mystery, rumors, and unanswered questions, Gibbs had returned. Not publicly, not officially, but he was back. And judging by the seriousness in his voice, something was terribly wrong. "Where are you?" McGee asked. "Doesn't matter." "Gibbs? Listen carefully." McGee grabbed a notebook. "Old habits." "Okay." "Someone's targeting Vance." McGee's expression changed instantly. "What?" "I've been tracking them for months." "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I didn't know who I could trust." The answer sent a chill down McGee's spine. "What do you need?" Gibbs looked at the wall covered in photographs. Names, connections, evidence. Pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. "Meet me tomorrow." "Where?" "I'll text you." The call ended. McGee stared at the phone. His pulse raced. For years, Gibbs had always seemed larger than life, a force of nature, the kind of agent who somehow knew things before anyone else. Now that same instinct was warning him that danger was closer than anyone realized. Meanwhile, across the city, a shadowy figure sat inside a luxury office overlooking the Potomac River. A file rested on the desk. The cover displayed a single name, Leon Vance. The man opened the folder. Inside were photographs, schedules, reports, months of surveillance. He smiled coldly. Almost time. Then his assistant entered. "Sir, what is it?" "We've encountered a problem." The man looked up. "What kind of problem?" The assistant swallowed nervously. "We believe Gibbs is involved." For the first time, genuine concern appeared on the man's face. "Leroy Jethro Gibbs?" "Yes." The room fell silent, because everyone who understood NCIS history knew one thing. Targeting Leon Vance was dangerous, but attracting Gibbs's attention? That could destroy everything. And now the hunter was no longer watching from the shadows. He was preparing to strike back, to be continued.